Now excited to be joined by a very, very special guest. It is dear friend Matt Hayes, one of my favorites. I miss you, man. I miss you at SDS. It's a bummer not having your stuff. Your reads are absolute must for anybody who loves college football, and I'm happy or whatever that you're doing great things, USA Today, and still get to hear you every once in a while on 1010 XL. But I miss you, man. It's good to see you.
I miss you too, bro. Good to be on with you. Good to talk to you. Very happy. Everything's going great. I'm sure everything's going great with you. I read you all the time too. You're awesome. Love you guys there at SDS.
Now I feel really sentimental and really, really sad. Look, me and C, right? We would go back and forth talking, different ideas and stuff. And hey, what are you guys hitting this week? And Matt would come up with these headlines that were like 4 sentences long, and I loved them. And they were always like, "Oh yeah, that's a really good idea. I should do something like that too."
What about?
All right, yeah. Let's look at some of these storylines that I think have been discussed a lot at the end of this college football regular season, and even just the playoff rankings that came out on Tuesday night. Everybody's mad about them, and I kind of did my piece on this. I don't really feel like banging the drum for anybody at this point, and I don't know how you reacted to those rankings. I'm sure your guy Leon Searcy is quite upset with the way that those rankings played out. But what was your takeaway
from
seeing
the Syracuse game is what he's more upset with.
As he should be, because Miami blew it too. It's everybody has blown it at some point this season. It's just, when did you blow it? But what was your reaction to seeing those rankings on Tuesday night?
Yeah, it's kind of very similar to my reactions almost every week, man. I don't know what this committee's doing. No one knows what this committee's doing. For some reason, there's a value on wins, no matter who your wins are against. And I've been saying this for now a month, Connor. What do people see in Penn State? I don't get it. I just don't get it. And that's beyond the whole Indiana thing, which is a charade, which is an absolute farce. Okay?
Let's pump the brakes on that. Let's get back to Penn State.
I know you're not going to like that, all right? But I'm just telling you right now, man.
You're right.
They literally played no one. Everyone in their schedule, other than Ohio State, has at least 5 losses.
Yep.
You cannot sit there and tell me that, okay, well, they won 11 games. And here's the problem, too. You've got 4 former coaches in that committee, okay? 4 big personalities. Coaches have big personalities, okay? And I can guarantee you those 4 coaches are going, because they talk. I've gone through these, I went through one of the original, whatever you want to call them, you go down there and they show you what it's like and you're in the room and you see it. And
the mock selection process.
Whatever you want to call it, right. They call it mock. I don't even know whatever it is. So if you have a big personality in that room, and if you've got 4 former coaches who pretty good coaches too, that are telling you that, hey, winning games is big. I don't care who you're beating. If you win 11 games, that's something. And it's just not realistic, because guess what? Liberty was 12-0 last year. Army's a game away from winning 11 games. And you can tell me, well, the schedule's different. The schedule's completely different what Indiana's playing. Okay, and then I'm going to come back to you with this. Well, guess what? The schedule those SEC teams are playing is a lot different than what the Indiana team's playing too. So you can't have it both ways, all right? That's kind of my point with not only Indiana, but Penn State as well. Look, Indiana played 1 game of significance, lost by 23. Penn State has played 1 game of significance, lost at home, had 4 shots from the 3 and couldn't get the ball in the end zone. So and not only that, you watch Indiana, I think you can say, all right, well, they sure look good, and they do. I'm not disagreeing with them. Offensively, they're fantastic. I love Curt Cignetti. I think he's a terrific coach. I love the fact that he said, you know what, screw it. We're going to take the core of this JMU team that, oh, by the way, started the season 11-0 or 10-0 and lost a game. We're going to take the core of this team. We're going to go to Indiana, and we're going to throw it all over the park. And I love that. And I love that he did that, and I love what they've done. I think it's fantastic. But that doesn't automatically mean, all right, let's throw them in the playoff. So I look at them, specifically Penn State. Like, what has Penn State done to make you think, all right, yeah, that's the number 3 team in the country? The number 3 team in the country?
Matt, they're 60 minutes from getting a 1 seed.
Yes.
Potentially.
Yes, they're 60 minutes from like Dylan Gabriel imploding and throwing 3 or 4 picks and being the number 1 seed. Right.
That's hilarious.
Is kind of crazy, right? So that's kind of my whole thing with this. And I think the biggest problem, honestly, Connor, is it's almost like we have not learned from the past. It's always, well, they won, so they'll move up from number 6 to number 4. Well, they lost, so they're going to move from number 5 to number 8. It's always this slotting thing. That was the biggest problem of all forever, and the exact reason why we went to the playoff, because we were tired of slotting, of teams moving up and down, and well, you got to move them here because they beat this team. No, at the very least, the playoff is a situation where you say, all right, let's take the totality of what's going on, okay, and the big wins, and deal with the losses. Losses are not a bad thing. I don't understand where losses have become a bad thing, unless it's you got blown out, or unless it's you've been upset by a team that was a 25-point underdog. That's a bad loss. But you can also make up for those bad losses with, I don't know, 3 wins against the current top 25. Yeah, you can do that. I think it's fair to say that. So if you don't like the Indiana loss by 23 at Ohio State, what's the makeup?
I agree with that.
Penn State's loss at home to Ohio State, what's the makeup game? There is none.
Yeah, and that's why Georgia is going to continue to get the benefit of the doubt as that 2-loss team, because the schedule is unbelievably difficult.
Yeah.
I would argue Bama's got 2 bad losses, and the Vandy loss isn't as bad as we thought it was going to be. Yeah. But the Oklahoma loss is terrible. It's terrible. Absolutely terrible, given the circumstances, given what you should have been playing for. It's a really, really bad loss. I think everybody in college football is fearing this scenario in which SMU loses to Clemson, and then SMU gets leapfrogged by Bama, an idle 9-3 Bama, and gets left out of the college football playoff, even though SMU was undefeated in ACC play this year and finished the regular season 11-1. What sort of mutiny would we have on our hands? Not just from Jim Phillips, who has spoken his piece about this whole deal, and I respect his unbiased opinion on all things ACC, but just college football administrators, coaches in general, that could look at what happens to SMU and fear, what's the point of these conference championship games? SMU would be better off opting out of a conference championship game at this point, based on the comments that Ward Manuel has already laid out there.
Well, that's another thing. We're going to get into that, the Ward Manuel comment too. But what's the use of the conference championship games? Money. I mean, that's it. It's money.
Yes. I mean, they would say, what's the use from a competition standpoint if we can be hurt by this more than we can be helped by this?
Right. But their point all along will be, but you can be helped by it. And that your destiny's in your hands. And I understand that. And I agree with that. I don't buy the whole, well, we can be hurt by that. That's a defeatist attitude, man. You're telling your team, if you're a coach out there and you're saying, well, what's the sense of playing in this game if you can get hurt by it? You're literally telling your team, we may not win this game. It's a defeatist attitude. So I don't have a problem with that. That I don't have a problem with. The problem I have with, and I wrote about this today in USA Today. Think about this. What if you're Burt Magnus, the president of ESPN? You're sitting there in your suburban Connecticut home. It's freezing outside, snowing even, fires roaring. You got a nice hot cup of coffee next to you, and you're watching the playoff reveal.
This is a nice scene. I like this. I'm very cozy right now.
Ward Manuel, the Michigan AD in the committee chair, say it doesn't matter what happens to those teams that are not playing because they're done. There's no more data points for them. You got to be kidding me. So literally what you've done is basically just kneecapped ESPN's most popular property right now, or close to it. I would say the NFL is still the most popular, but it's a booming property for them, okay? What's going on? And he just kneecapped it. He just said nothing else matters for those teams behind the teams that aren't playing. And my whole point is, so let's say Georgia beats Texas, wins the SEC. Ole Miss beat the SEC champion by 18. That's not a data point? Are you telling me that's not a data point? So for him to say that there are no more data points for the teams that aren't playing is ridiculous. You've got to take the totality of the season. Now, I will say this too, okay? My guess is Ward kind of said something he wishes he didn't say.
He said too much.
Yeah, it's live TV and it happens. And I've done it. We've all done it. That was a bad misspeak. I'll tell you that right now, because you are telling everyone that you're not taking the totality of what's going on. You're going week by week and then changing. And that's, look, I get Ole Miss and I get the whole Lane Kiffin argument, but at the end of the day, Ole Miss, even after those 2 losses to Kentucky and LSU, which were brutal, those 4th down prayers that Kentucky and Ole Miss hit. I mean, Ole Miss could easily be 11-1 playing that championship game right now. Those 2 fourth down plays were brutal. But, man, you go to Florida, you got to win that game. You've
Seriously.
got to win that game. And they go in there and they lose the game. And they got no one to blame but themselves.
Yeah. Don't have your star quarterback throw 3 interceptions in the final 2 minutes of a game against Florida.
And I'm not – and, again, I know the Ole Miss fans are screaming, what about Indiana? I agree with you. Indiana shouldn't be in there either. So, yeah, I mean, you're not – like, I'm not saying, okay, I'm choosing Indiana over Ole Miss or Indiana over South Carolina. I think if Indiana and South Carolina played right now, South Carolina beat them by 2 touchdowns. So it's not – I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that if you have the ability to win a game and get in, like Miami, like Ole Miss, like Alabama, you have no one to blame but yourself if it doesn't happen.
You talk about things that you say on live TV that sometimes you wish you could have back. I was on Fine
all the time, by the way. All the time.
It happens frequently. On Tuesday, I went down the rabbit hole of talking about Ryan Day and this potential vacancy at Ohio State after the debacle of what happened against Michigan. And for the very first time, it feels like we're talking about a coach at this point of the season where it truly is title or bust. You could lose a national championship on the very last play, and right. I still would feel like, yep, you got to fire Ryan Day if you do not win a national championship. Do you disagree with that notion at all before we get into the potential candidates that could be available for it? Because that was my regrettable comment, was kind of going down that line and then saying like, oh, I think a bunch of these SEC coaches could, potentially get that call and have to answer that if Ohio State does become open.
Yeah, I think it's you're talking about a guy that's 47-1 against everybody but Michigan.
In the Big Ten, right? Yeah.
That's in the Big Ten. That's very hard to fire a guy like that. But, I mean, if you're Ohio State and if your world revolves around that game, which it clearly does, you at least will look at that. I don't think they should fire him. It's not just the 47-1. He's recruiting at a high level. Like, they're top 5 every single year. And I know you'll say, well, anyone else gets in there, they can be top 5 too. Okay. But he's developing guys to get to the next level. They're not running afoul of the NCAA laws, whatever NCAA laws are left. All right. He's doing everything basically but beating Michigan. And that's a mental block clearly now at this point. I mean, that's you literally in the last month and a half of the season, Will Howard became this thrower that they could rely on, and they were throwing the ball deep. They were going to third level throws, which they hadn't done earlier in the year because they were stuck on this idea of, oh, Chip Kelly's here. Now we're going to run the ball like he used to at Oregon. Stupid. Okay. That's what it was. And I said that from the beginning of hiring Chip Kelly. You look, do what makes you good, what makes you exceptional and elite. Before Kyle McCord last year, his quarterbacks were averaging 41 touchdown passes a season. 41, Connor. So he gets a first-year starter in there who I thought didn't play that poorly in Kyle McCord. They go to Michigan. They lose that game. The interception in the last play of the game. Now it's all on Kyle McCord because he didn't throw it for 41 touchdown passes, even though he was a first-year starter. So you give up on him. He goes to Syracuse, and look what he is now, right? What are they with Kyle McCord right now, a second year in that Ryan Day system, not the whole Chip Kelly crap that they panicked and did. In the Ryan Day system that has been tried and true, where is Ohio State now? Ohio State beats Michigan if Kyle McCord's their quarterback, and they beat him probably rather easily too. But you panic. That game makes coaches panic, and he panicked. He changed everything. They threw $41 million at a problem and didn't get anything from it. $41 million. Think about that. $20 million for the roster, which their AD Ross Bjork said they cost them $20 million to build that roster. All right. $10 million for Ryan Day's salary and $11.1 for the assistant coach salaries. $41 million. And still lost to Michigan. And they're 10-2. Now they can still win the national title. If you win the national title, then okay, everything's great. But if you don't, then what?
Then it's the most intriguing job opening. And I've said this before. I think it's the most intriguing job opening since Mark Richt was fired at Georgia. I think you can make that case that it's the best job vacancy available, given what you're going against in the Big Ten, given how the fundraising is clearly still there. You're going to have an athletic director that's going to absolutely go to bat for you in Ross Bjork until he leaves for another job. But like that's that's a great thing to
by
have.
the way. I
Say
saw
it
you
again.
set that in until you leave for another job.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what he does. He's a climber. He's a
Well, I
silver
mean,
ring. That's what they do.
there is
Yeah.
no better job than it's Ohio State and Texas, so there is no better. So if he leaves, it's because he's not doesn't want to deal with that nonsense. So
Commissioner
yeah,
of the NFL, Ross
right.
Field is going to go. Yeah. So let's say this scenario does present itself. Ohio State doesn't win a national championship. They have this weird timing, a la Alabama last year, where they're really going to be exposed to the 30-day window, and it's going to get things moving in the coaching carousel. It's going to get things moving in the transfer portal, and there are a lot of different ramifications with the player personnel aspect of it. Who's the ideal candidate for this job? This job that is, man, it is kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity to get those resources in that place and knowing the tradition and the floor that Ohio State has had.
So I mean, we deal in hypotheticals. That's what our business is hypotheticals. I hate hypotheticals.
Entirely.
But it's what it is, man. I wouldn't fire him. I absolutely wouldn't. But if you are talking about him getting fired, him losing his job, or even him going to the NFL, which is also a possibility.
Don't say he's going to the Bears. I can't deal with that. Come on, Matt. Like, let's move past. I can't even, when I see someone online that says that, I just instantly want to move past it. I'm like, I don't need that in my life. All right, I've got enough angst about the Bears. I can't handle the angst that Ryan Day is attached to right now. Let's not even.
That, man. There are many more teams that are going to be looking for a coach.
Yeah.
Who's the ideal candidate? I mean, it has to be Marcus Freeman. It's got to be the guy that played at Ohio State, that knows Ohio State, that bleeds scarlet and gray. He's the perfect candidate. But I don't think he leaves Notre Dame. Why would he leave Notre Dame? There's really no reason to jump into that mess. Now, if they hire somebody else and somebody goes 3 or 4 years and they flame out, then he's fine to go back because he's been at Notre Dame for 3 or 4 more years, maybe won a national title. Who knows? Then you go back and kind of save your program. But I wouldn't follow. It's not really following Ryan Day. It's following that environment right now at Ohio State. Mike Vrabel's a good guy, but I don't know if you're Mike Vrabel and you can coach an NFL team or Ohio State, and you got to deal with all that nonsense that there's no regulations with the NIL. You're going to jump into that? I don't think so. Other than that, Matt Campbell might be a nice choice, but Matt Campbell doesn't seem like a guy who wants to jump into that big pond. I don't see that.
It's another job that I have.
He's always been hey, I want to develop young guys. It's not that I'm developing football players. I'm developing young guys. And if they become great football players, fantastic. And I think it's the other way around at Ohio State.
It's another job that I've heard Matt Campbell be linked to that would surprise people. And it's kind of the second best available job right now. Let's just say a certain opening, Chapel Hill, maybe more of a basketball school. That's just what we've heard behind the scenes, TBD on how that'll play out. But
interesting.
Yeah, it's just an interesting thing to throw out there, and that's nothing's official, obviously, with his interest or anything related. But that's just kind of what you hear. I'd be fascinated to see the swings they would take, though, because I don't think they would just go after Vrabel. With all due respect to him, a guy that Urban Meyer didn't even realize was on his staff. God bless Urban Meyer, man. That would be.
But is that real, or is he just kind of like is that just kind of Herb being Herb? Is that kind of Herb just kind of like he knows that he's just being, I can't say the word, on purpose. You know what I mean? Because that's just he likes gigging.
Why would you do that? Why?
Because he likes gigging people. That's who he is. His personality.
I would not gig Mike Vrabel.
I wouldn't either. But we have look. First off, we have no idea what's going through that cat's head.
True.
I mean, from day to day, maybe even hour to hour. Okay, so you don't have a guy on your staff for 2 years and not know him. Okay, come on. Of course he knew him. There was just some reason why he was gigging him. It's just only Herb knows. It's Herb's world, man, and only Herb knows.
All right. So,
by the way, they got him to play Herb on the Netflix. Did you see the Netflix Aaron Hernandez?
I haven't yet, and I've been very tempted to get into that world, and I just haven't, for whatever reason, found it. That might be an off-season show.
I only watched the first couple episodes, but the guy that plays Herb is just such a dweeby guy, and I can guarantee you, Herb watched that and said, "Are you serious? This is the guy that made me." I guarantee he did that, 100%.
What are the chances that the guy who plays Urban in that show asked to follow Urban around and just shadow him for 2 weeks? And Urban's like, hell no, get away from me.
I
I'm
mean,
not showing you
yeah,
anything.
he's literally just some dweeby guy, man. And there's no, I mean, Urban's probably like pissed off about it. Seriously.
Yeah. Oh God. All right. Other vacancies. It's been a very quiet coaching carousel so far, and I always love talking about this stuff with you because I think it's really intriguing, and I think it impacts the next 5-10 years of the sport. But an area that you're very familiar with, the UCF vacancy. I threw out a list the other day that had UCF fans up in arms because everything makes UCF fans up in arms, as we know. Um, but
That's
Jamie
so
Chat,
true, man. That is so true.
they're Twittered Beetlejuice. That's what they are. Just don't say
Right.
UCF 3 times. They'll come to you. But Jamie Chadwell is the one that's kind of been linked to that job. And who knows, by the time that people are listening to this, maybe a decision has been made on that. But who's the candidate that kind of makes sense there? That's intriguing, maybe outside of Chadwell. That if you saw that headline today, you'd be like, oh, I actually think that makes a lot of sense. I really like that.
I don't know, but it's not Scott Frost. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole idea of bringing guys back for an encore, I hate that.
Retread. Yeah.
It's not even that it's retread. It's that, they've been there, done that. They're going to go back and think it's the same way. And college football, from when Scott Frost left UCF to go to Nebraska, my God, it's a completely different world. So you cannot expect Scott Frost to walk in there and think, all right, yeah, I'm going to go with what we have now instead of what we had, and think I can go back to what we had, and make that work, because I don't care if it's a square peg in a round hole. I'm going to make it work because we won here before. That's no, man, no. You need someone who gets college football now, because that's a good job. There's a lot of money, a lot of support in that job. They got really nice facilities. They're now in a power conference. They're in a winnable power conference. It's a very good job. You recruit a state like that, which now you have a little more heft in your ability to recruit players because it is a Power 4 conference. I think you go get somebody young, somebody that knows offense, because offense sells right now. And I don't think it has to be a head coach either. Like a guy like Charlie Weiss Jr. from Ole Miss.
That's why I
the Ole Miss
suggested.
OC and quarterback job would be a brilliant hire for UCF. Now, I don't know if they would do that, but that's a guy I would go after. A young guy that knows offense, that recruits really well, that gets today's player, right? And then you have him, you get together with him and hire a general manager who does all the other stuff. And that, by the way, and I'm writing this for USA Today too this week, is the general manager is going to become more and more of an important part of college football moving forward, because coaches do not want to deal with this crap. They don't want to deal with the salary cap. They don't want to deal with how much money do we have for this guy or that guy. Then you just hire a general manager to do that stuff. Now, the thing is once you hire a general manager and give him that power, how much power does he have then? Because in the NFL, general managers have the power. So you're ceding a lot of power. So I think coaches want this idea of a guy that oversees the program, but not so much that they have so much power where they can make decisions that coaches typically make all-encompassing decisions.
Ryan Silverfield was the one I was thinking, the Memphis coach.
Yeah, another good one. Yeah.
And Memphis fans got all of my mentions about like, wow, do you ever leave for UCF? It's like, what conference is Memphis in? What conference is UCF in now? Yeah, say no more. Memphis, great job. Been going on with my guys, Greg and Eli, for 6 years, like weekly, and love what they have built. Love the job that they did to be able to beat that Tulane team that everybody was kind of hyping up. And then they have that great showing on Thanksgiving. But just think that's a really intriguing possibility. And who knows, maybe UCF has already kind of moved past that, or he's not interested in a job like that, even though he has the experience there. You're going to be going to something unique this week. You haven't been going to a ton of games and stuff like that this year, and kind of focusing on bigger picture stuff for USA Today. But you're going to a meeting with, instead of the SEC championship to see your old buddy, you're instead going out to Vegas because you like to gamble or something like that. That's just what you were saying before.
I don't really like Vegas either. I mean, Vegas is one of those. It's one day. One day is good. Then after one day, you're kind of like, I don't know about this place.
1.5 days. 1.5 days.
Yeah, 1.5. All right, 1.5 is fine. One night is what I'm saying. All right. The Sports Business Journal forum is out there. and all the movers and shakers in college sports, athletic directors, television people. They'll all be there, and it's symposium form of the state of college sports, and it's going to be interesting because it's going to be a week after the final poll comes out, and there will be definitely talk about where the 2026 format goes, because the new contract begins in 2026. How many teams will it be? What will the format look like? Will there even be a selection committee? Which, believe me, that talk is now heating up. There'll be a lot of talk, obviously, about the pay for play, which is coming next year, and the $20 million salary cap. So there's a lot going on out there, a lot of stuff that really can define the sport moving forward for decades.
People want to see the selection committee gone at this point, I think. And I think you'd get a
Yeah.
lot of support for that, because even the Big Ten and the SEC, as much as people push back on this demand for 4 automatic bids apiece, they're getting to the place that everybody else wants to get to, just not in the way that everybody wants to get there. And they're trying to say, we don't want this to be subjective. We want to just look at the facts, look at the body of work, who we've been for the last 10 years, the last 20 years, and kind of take that out of the equation and just say, make it the NFL in that way. Highest in those standings, boom, you get your playoff spot. We're not sitting here debating who's that 11 seed, who's that 12 seed. Jim Phillips is going to be irate if this plays out poorly for SMU after how he felt about the Miami seeding and all that stuff. But like, is there a chance that could happen and that we just don't have a selection committee at all in a couple of years?
Yes. And I respect Jim Phillips. It doesn't matter if he's irate. It doesn't. I mean, it doesn't matter if Brett Yormark's irate. It doesn't matter, because the SEC and Big Ten will just say, all right, well, we'll just go do our own thing. Then what are you guys going to do? And that, look, it's brutal. It shouldn't be that way, but that's the reality of the situation. The television executives want the Big Ten and want the SEC. That's it. And do they want games from other conferences? Sure, they do. Of course. Colorado with Deion's a perfect example. The Canes, yes, of course. When the Canes are hot, when the Canes are good, it's great for college football. When Florida State's good, it's great for college football. We saw that, last year. So, yeah, there's certainly are pockets of other games they want, but for the most part, they know what drives their advertising sales. They're trying to make money too, the television companies, okay? They're making money off advertising, and the advertisers want to see the SEC and Big Ten because that's what draws eyes. So, again, the ACC can be upset about it. The Big 12 can be upset about it. The other Group of 5 conferences can stomp their feet. It doesn't matter. It all depends on how, and I hate to say this, how magnanimous the SEC and Big 10 end up being. They're going to say, all right, well, do we get 4 automatic bids? Do we move to 14 teams? And then we get 5 automatic? And then there's, one or two for one of the other leagues, and maybe a Notre Dame can get in if they hit this spot. Or, do you force Notre Dame's hand by saying we get 5 and there's 2 more for the Big 12 and 2 more for, the ACC? Then what? Because I that's another thing I've never understood is, what does Notre Dame do if their hand is forced? They can say that they're independent, they don't want to join a conference, but if the SEC and the Big Ten say, look, this is what we're doing, we're going to 14, and you got to be in a conference, what are they going to do? They're going to say, no, we're not going to be in a conference, and we're not going to be part of the college football postseason? Of course they won't. They'll join a league.
They'll join the Big Ten and get a significantly increased TV contract is what would happen if their hand was forced. But until their hand is forced, they're going to keep riding this out. And I don't think that the people that are like, oh, well, you can't get a first round bye, that's a big bummer. I think they're perfectly fine to host a home playoff game and have this great scene in South Bend and have a chance to be able to get a marquee win like that, and what it means for Notre Dame and what people have thought of Notre Dame with their struggles in the New Year's Six Bowls in the 21st century, which is really well documented. You kind of get a chance to break that. And I don't think they're necessarily, losing sleep over the fact that they can't get that first round bye. This hasn't forced their hand. Maybe a new system will.
No, but if your new system also said you cannot have a first round home game, you are always on the road no matter what.
Yeah, that's true. That changes it.
Then they're starting to think, all right, well, it might be time to get into a conference. And I'm not really forcing them into a conference. That's not really the goal. The idea is, it's not forcing Notre Dame into a conference. It's I'm not saving one spot for them in the playoff in case they're good. You know what I mean? Like you don't need that. If anything, you're going to need that one spot for a group of 5 team. So that's kind of my point is, okay, you leave those at-large bids out there, and it's almost like you're saving something for Notre Dame. And believe me, I'm a guy who thinks if you're going to go to 14, just go all at-large, 14 at-large bids. Don't give any automatic qualifications, and then see where it goes. And then then you're more than likely going to end up with 4 and 4 again. It'll be a similar type of scenario, I would think, or 5 and 3, or 5 and 5 even.
Last one for you. I know you got to run. SEC championship prediction. You're not going to be there because, again, you don't want to see me. But what do you think plays out on Saturday?
I hate to pick against the boogeyman. I do, man. I just do. But I think Texas gets them back only because I think Sark is really good at adjusting, at making adjustments, and I think he's going to make adjustments to their protection of what happened in the first game when they just couldn't protect. And man, that photo of Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning on the sidelines.
Well, that's something.
They looked like they were like, I'm not going in. And then the other one said, well, I'm not going in either. So I think he figures it out. And I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm going to go with Texas. I think Texas wins a close game.
Interesting.
Hate picking against the boogeyman too, but I am.
Boogeyman's still saving.
Yeah. Still saving. I mean, the boogeyman could still easily step up and beat the hell out of Texas. There's no doubt about it.
True. Matt, you're the best. We'll talk really, really soon. Not see each other really soon, though.
No. All right. See you, brother.
Thanks, man.